I'm Andy Pleninger, and I'm the Urban Community Forestry Program Head for the state of North Carolina, work for the North Carolina Forest Service. So I manage the Urban Community Forestry Program for the state, which the goal is to promote sustainable urban forest management across the state. Do that through outreach, education, best management practices, and then linking communities to those resources and direct service providers that might be able to help them achieve sustainable urban forest management. Best management practices in urban forestry, there's a lot of elements that go into managing our community forests. The simplest one is perhaps just looking at canopy cover from a community side or even from the state perspective. The potential loss of that canopy either through storm events or developments or just normal attrition, and that's particularly true when you get into urban areas. We lose trees if they're not replaced, that canopy gets lost. So from the state perspective, I do focus on looking at the big picture and helping communities to conserve their canopy cover all the way down to individual trees, to helping them manage those trees, take care of them, planting practices and so forth. So that can be direct services, local, right down at a tree level in terms of proper tree care. We do not provide those kinds of direct services. There are service providers such as tree services, consultants, etc., that provide either doing tree work or providing consulting services. So from our perspective is making sure that those people are educated, getting guidance and education and proper tree care, and then directing a community to those good service providers as a piece of it. So conservation of tree canopy, it has to happen at the local level, and it's usually driven by legislation, and that's in the form of ordinances. The challenges are, it's a long process and somewhat complicated. There's a lot of stakeholders. When you try to write laws that may direct how activities happen in a community. So it's not a simple process, and so that creates a certain barrier and a challenge. From the state standpoint, and where I try to assist is try to provide some good tools, some good language, ordinance language, to communities to help possibly use that or help them make decisions on whether that's appropriate for their community. There's also a lot of information and a lot which can be confusing. So, but we have a number of good tools that you can find, the Green Growth Toolbox. You can go to our website, there's some tools about planning, developing an ordinance, and that provides a good framework for somebody to start. But so the other challenge, I think, is ultimately at the community level is it takes some leadership, either on the part of the politicians in a community or the citizens in the community to say that this is important and this is what we need. So without one of those leaders kind of driving the process, those types of things just won't happen. So to provide education and tools to get that down to local, the stakeholders and those that are in the positions to make a difference on the ground. That information, that good information, to educate them to make decisions that can be in the best interest of that community. What we see where we have communities that have good ordinances in place, there's a lot of things that have to happen to make that work. But that starts with, one, some local leadership, and two, some expertise. Where we don't either have knowledge of that, if you push out into more rural communities that don't have pressures such as growth impacting them, they haven't necessarily seen a need, rightly so, to possibly consider whether they should have some legislation to protect forest lands and trees. So what I do, our program is designed to do, is to do outreach to communities, and I target where we provide those services based on where there seems to be a need. And often that's going to be maybe on the buffers of where we have expansive growth going on right now. I know that growth is going to push out into some of these communities, so we will do outreach to try and reach out to those folks and say, hey, here are some tools for you. Here are the benefits of sustainable urban forest management and what the benefits these trees provide to your community. We are trying to pass those best management practices on. Tools or ordinances that worked well over here may help you here, because everybody has their area of expertise, and you can't bring up somebody who's up to speed to start from ground zero and write a tree ordinance if they have no experience in that. So our role is to try and help the communities along that level, give them some expertise, some real good tools to help them develop something that's going to work for that community. And it's a challenge because every community is not the same, and you can't take an ordinance over here and plug it in here and say it's going to work. But there's some basic steps that we go through in that process. And that's true no matter where you are, assessing what that asset might be that forest cover, trees, open space, all the other things that might be considered in a development project, water sheds, all the wildlife. So trees and canopy cover are just a part of that, but they should be one of those things that's in your consideration as you're considering any kind of development ordinances. North Carolina has had a long tradition of forest management, and primarily driven out of the forest products industry. But what we have is a structure from county rangers that are in each community, in counties, up through district and little larger regional areas that have service foresters that are in place to provide forest management assistance. Now, historically, that's been more forest management, product management, wildlife management, but obviously as growth happens, urban forestry is becoming a bigger component of some of the things they do. So we're fortunate that we have a wealth of qualified folks that are out there to kind of help communities along their line, move them along the continuum to conserve our natural resources. And that starts with a county ranger. I work to try and get the best management practices and tools down to our folks on the ground to help them lead those communities toward their goals and objectives at the local level. Now this too, that happens to be a federally funded program. Urban community forestry dollars come to North Carolina, they come to every state in the union. Has urban forestry dollars. So typically that may include funding a position like mine in every state, and also doing kind of pass down grants to communities, or also like we in North Carolina, we help with the North Carolina Urban Forestry Council, which is an outreach organization. They're a not-for-profit, and they do much of the outreach and education across the state. So for North Carolinians, that's a great resource too. You should join this organization because they have community level people that are members, provide education, workshops on all things urban and community forestry to wildlife forest management. But also it's a group of community level volunteer organizations that then allow those folks to talk to each other. We're doing this over in our community. Right next door, here's somebody that is coming along maybe in that path, you can partner up and go, wow, you know, I have the same sort of issues, how are you working through that? Ultimately, this is about, you know, it's a partnership. People all working together to make our communities more livable. So there are a lot of resources available. The benefits that an urban forest canopy and trees that are, you know, provide for our communities are many. There's some really specific ones. You can look at stormwater management, helping to reduce the amount of stormwater runoff, trapping CO2, you know, reducing greenhouse gases, pollution. And so trees are really kind of the motors that clean our environment and help our urban areas and make our communities more livable. There's some good research going on right now that's directly tying the role that trees provide in helping our human health. Called the Southern Group of State Foresters has a campaign that's called Healthy Trees, Healthy Lives. And it provides some specific correlation between various human health issues and how trees, in this case, certainly all our natural environment, but specifically to trees. That Healthy Trees, Healthy Lives is a campaign. You can find it at the Southern Group of State Foresters website. But if you Google Healthy Trees, Healthy Lives, it'll take you to that site and kind of give you some really good information that directly illustrates how trees impact our health.